Second rodeo with Salvarada. In early January, near the end of winter vacation, I went over to Tiernan's house and decided to give Salvarada another go. Tiernan had acquired some, and Ernie and Earl also wanted to give it a shot. At some point, I had introduced Ernie and Earl to Tiernan, and they had all become fast friends. The connections they shared were ones that I didn't, namely, interest in airsoft guns, first-person shooters, and knives. This may not come as a great surprise, but I'm not a huge fan of weapons. Sure, I understand that the recreational firing of weapons can be enjoyable, but I'm not particularly interested in instruments of destruction. When it comes down to it, these things are made for killing, and as a general philosophy, I prefer life over death for all things. Anyway, having had fun with green power for some time, Ernie and Earl were pumped to experiment with Salvarada. "Maybe I will become a wizard fighting dragons," Ernie quipped. I was disappointed with his approach. I knew that Salvarada requires extra care and respect. It could take you out of your body and crumble your whole sense of reality. You don't become a wizard just like that. I couldn't tell Ernie anything, though, because he had already forgotten who had introduced him to the world of powers in the first place, and didn't seem to pay me any particular respect in that regard. We sat around the couches as Ernie ignited his portion of Salvarada. As soon as he exhaled the vapours, he became wide-eyed, stood up fast, and ran out of the living room toward the door to the backyard. The entourage of inexperienced power users followed as I remained in the living room and shook my head. I told him that there were too many people around for him to take the Salvarada responsibly, but he wouldn't listen, so I took the Salvarada vessel and served myself once everyone aside from River had exited the room. As I exhaled and went horizontal on the couch, it felt like I had fallen through the couch's crack and had disappeared into a dark realm of geometric patterns. The last image I saw of the autumnally decorated living room curtain became a moon in the dark as I got dragged into the darkness of the couch crack. Salvarada seems to possess the ability to fit the user into any realm it sees fit, regardless of the user's preconceptions. I didn't mind what happened, and in fact thought it was kind of cool. I had this to say about it in my journal. I lost my ups and downs. I felt my consciousness turn around. I saw what's not and contrary to such, and I remembered how reality feels to the touch. It grasped the real and pulled me out of the dark, leaving the soil to solidify and coat itself in tree bark. Now I have new dreams, realizing all of those thoughts were drowned in cream. I found myself, but because it found me. The most sensible of these lines of poetry happens to be the first one. Salvarada had lifted me out of a cycle of emotional highs and lows, or at least had temporarily had done so. Though the memories are foggy, I remember being a bit melancholic around those times, perhaps disillusioned with my crowd. This rapid removal from reality that Salvarada granted allowed me to view myself objectively as a sort of rebooting of the system. I would come to understand this effect as one of the more primary, long-lasting effects of certain power consumptions as my wisdom grew. Still, Salvarada has something about it that is a bit unnerving. Perhaps it's the feeling of having my heart somersaulting in its beat, like it's the little arrow being nicked by the spinning of a wheel of fortune. Or perhaps it's the feverish sweat I tended to enter upon exhalation. Regardless of these less than desirable side effects, Salvarada has treated me better than anyone else I have known who has tried it. Of course, Rashid had positive takeaways as well, but he seemed incapable of not having a healthy relationship with powers. Doesn't matter how great the experience was, nor how seemingly benign, He believed that these powers required a certain discipline in their use as a means of respect for the realms from which they came. It wasn't that I didn't believe him, but I felt myself to have a higher capacity for frequent use than most people, and maybe I even required it. Almost everyone must have a certain amount of spiritual work to do. Spiritual, referring to murky realms of mental health. Maybe Rashid's soul didn't require much in this incarnation. Only the great mystery of death would ever let anyone know for sure.